All right, so my name is Jen Purcell. Um, I'm very excited to be talking to y'all, whether you're watching the recording or listening. I think what I'm going to do is what Elle said she was going to do, like listen like a podcast in the car later because I've missed them. So I'm so glad that you are taking the time to listen to this. So when Abby first asked me to talk about mental health, side note, Abby and I went to undergrad together and we were in student government together. So that's how we know each other. But we're both big mental health advocates and we were in college. So that's kind of how it ties together. And we still are. So when she asked me to present, I kind of wanted to do it that was like most authentic to me. So I think I'm just going to share my story and kind of what helped me and the tools that I've learned over these years. So I hope everyone's cool with that. It's going to be pretty casual. We're going to be like chatting. Well, I'll be like chatting at you, I guess. But I'm going to be talking about kind of how you can save yourself. And what that entails is taking back your joy. And we'll get into that as the presentation goes on. But, just a trigger warning, there's going to be a little bit of suicidal ideation topics and sexual assaults, just to warn people. So hello, I'm Jen. I got my bachelor's at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. I was very involved on campus. I was student body president when I was there, in a lot of different organizations. And then right now I am studying at the University of Mississippi to get my master's in education, specifically higher education in student affairs. I want to be like a vice chancellor of student affairs someday at a college. I'm also the graduate community director at the University of Mississippi. So I'm a director in housing, or a grad community director in housing. So I help oversee a community. And then I'm also the leadership advisor for housing. And I'm a strong mental health advocate. So kind of going back to why I'm a mental health advocate, I was a mental health advocate before I realized I needed to take care of my own mental health. And I think that was also a way of avoidance. But thinking back, the first thing I really struggled with was anxiety. I just think back to like sixth grade little me. Every Sunday night, you can ask my parents this, every Sunday night, I would not sleep because I was afraid I was going to forget my locker combination because I hadn't had to use it all weekend. And then I was going to be late for class. And like that kind of mentality followed me until I really needed to take care of myself. But just kind of that anxiety of wanting to be perfect and not wanting to get in trouble, and I needed everyone to like me, is where I remember seeing the start of my anxiety. And then in high school, I was in a very toxic relationship that ended up involving sexual assault. And I was too afraid to really be honest about what had happened for years until I was an adult. And then I was more open about it. But that kind of trauma, I'm still working through, and that's okay. But when you're at an age, I was 14. So when you're at an age where you're, still definitely developing, and to have kind of that trauma really affected me, and it affected future relationships and kind of how I saw myself and how I saw the world. But I have also always been a very independent child and human being as a whole. So I knew for a while that I wasn't okay, but I wanted to fix it myself. And I know we're talking about saving yourself, but you can't do it by yourself. So I was always very independent and too stubborn and prideful to accept the fact that I needed help. Um, and when I was 16, my parents were like, "Why are you so angry?" And they, didn't know. And how could they know? I didn't tell them. So I was forced to go see a counselor, and I was very stubborn. I didn't really talk much. So I didn't really get a whole lot out of it. And then that kind of followed me into college. No, it didn't kind of, it definitely followed me into college. So I started my freshman year at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. And that is really when my depression took over. The first semester had a 3.6. And then second semester, I had below a 2.0 and actually was on academic probation. And it's because I never went to class. I wasn't taking care of myself. I didn't care. I didn't see a point in doing any of it. And I actually dropped out of college, but I am glad I did that because I did need to take a break because I had gone to college because that's what you were supposed to do. And I think a lot of people do that. So I ended up traveling to, I moved to Orlando, Florida, and worked at Walt Disney World. And I had a great support system of friends there. And being in the sun and being very active helped my mental health. But I would still go home and cry for like, I didn't know why. I was just very weepy and constantly felt like I was in flight or fight mode, always on edge, always ready for something bad to happen. And I had felt that way for as long as I could remember. And it was actually like physically painful. Like I was always in pain. My body always ached from being so tense. And then I decided to go back to school and I transferred to the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. And I there really developed even more because I had it as a child, but really developed this idea that I only had worth if I was the best. So I had to be the best at everything. I had to be the leader. I had to always have it together. I always had to look good. I always had to know exactly what I was doing. I had to be the best because that's the only way I could have worth and be loved. And I just strived and would take on all these different things. I became student body president. One, because I wanted to advocate, but two, because I was continuing to feed this lie that I was only good enough if I was in that role. And my mental health just continued to deteriorate because I just kept running from things that I needed to work through as a kid. And I just kept running. And I would tell myself, it's never going to catch up with me. It'll be fine. I can push it away. I'll stay busy. And everything kind of came to a halt when I was in a very toxic relationship in college and was unfortunately sexually assaulted again, and was also in a position where I was too afraid to say anything because this individual was pretty influential on campus and I didn't know what to do anymore. I couldn't continue. I just shut down. I just felt I hit a point where I felt nothing. And I think that was scary because I had never felt nothing. But then I realized, well, I would rather feel nothing than feel sad, which looking back is a huge warning sign. And I knew at that point I really needed help, but it wasn't until I literally was stopped by people that cared about me and said, you have to leave and go take care of yourself. And I'm very grateful now for that. I wasn't at the time, but there was a mentor of mine, one of my very good friends, that showed me, we care about you and we're genuinely worried about you and we need you to go get help. Because I was at the point where to be frank, I didn't want to not live anymore. I just didn't want to feel the way I was feeling anymore. And I didn't know how to cope with how I had been feeling my whole life. So long intro, but I my mom drove me to a behavioral health hospital, and I stayed there for a few days just for my own safety, because my loved ones care about me, but they're not equipped to like know what to do, and that's okay. So I was there for my own safety, and then I was able to get connected with it's called partial hospitalization therapy. So it's 6 hours a day. I ended up doing that for 64 days. And it was probably the most tiring, emotionally draining experience of my life, but one of the best, if not the best. Like, it saved me. And I didn't have to go. I chose to go. I was at the point where I was like, I cannot live like this anymore. I don't want to. And I think I realized that I didn't deserve to. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Like, you deserve happiness. You deserve to feel joy. You deserve to feel loved. And we live in a society where it's go, 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 go all the time. And it's like praised upon if you're anxious and praised upon if you don't have time to take care of yourself. And that's just not the reality, because then you have burnout and then things like what I just described happen. So in therapy, precursor, I am not a therapist. I am just sharing what I have learned. I am not a professional, but I wanted to share some things that I used that saved me. So first day, they gave us these books and they said, welcome to, do you have it? Yes. They said, welcome to therapy. We are going to do some cognitive behavioral therapy. And I was like, what? I have to do homework? I have to write things down? Like, I thought I was just going to talk. No, like, it was a full-time job. So essentially, how I look at it is I had to rewire my brain, because my brain, it just wasn't working. The way I was thinking wasn't working. So if we look at this, I like to start with feelings. So you can't control how you feel. You can't. Your feelings are your feelings. And then your feelings turn into thoughts. And that's kind of where we look at, all right, how can we change our thinking? Because our thoughts then become our behaviors. And eventually, if we keep repeating the same behaviors and how we cope or not cope with things, in turn, go back to our feelings. And it's just this cycle. And one thing I told someone this the other day, but like, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So I remember it was the first one-on-one I had with her. I was like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. Just tell me something to make me feel better, and then I'll just like go. And she was like, no, because you've been doing this and allowing yourself to feel this way, and you don't know how to cope with anything for the past, I was 23 years. So I had to learn how to rewire how I thought about things. which was really scary. And me being the perfectionist that I am, when I first started therapy, I bought all the books I could find and I just wanted to like study it so that I could learn it and then perfect it and repeat it. But I was learning about it, but I wasn't applying it. Like I wasn't doing it. I was just trying to prove to my therapist that I was like the best patient because I understood everything, which is funny to think about now. So, a big thing, and Abby, this might look familiar to you. So, a huge thing, every study I've ever read, and they talked about this all the time, is rumination. And people are like, what is rumination? And then I explain it. Yeah. And then I explain it and they're like, oh, I do that. Well, everyone does it, right? So rumination is thinking about negative things over and over and over again. You can ruminate in your head or you can ruminate out loud. And when I heard this, I was like, what? I do that all the time. That's all I think about is negative things over and over again. Whether it be the possibility of a negative thing happening, something that happened in the past that I wish I could do over again, or something I really wish I could say to somebody. And the reality is I can't because I can't change time. And then also my loved ones, and it's not their fault, like they thought they were helping me, were helping me ruminate out loud because I would talk about something over and over and over again. And it was negative, and it was just to talk about it. Like I was seeking validation over and over again to make me feel better about something that had happened, but it wasn't doing anything for me. It was just, this happened and they're bad. So say something to make me feel good. Like by doing that, you're depending on other people to validate your feelings and then to also make you feel better temporarily. It's almost like a little like high when somebody's like, oh, like that was bad, but it's not sustainable. Like you have to be able to be okay without constant validation from people because one, that's exhausting and not fair to them. And two, at the end of the day, you have you because other people have stuff going on too, right? So rumination, everyone does it. Okay, well, I can't control my thoughts. So what do you want me to do? That's what I thought. I was like, all right, so everyone does it. What's the big deal? When I first started therapy, every week they have you fill out not a test. One second. One second. Somebody is frantically knocking on my door. All right, so hi again. Sorry about that. They were knocking on, they needed like, I live in a residence hall, but the apartment, and I guess the smoke alarm was acting up. So they were checking my room. So I apologize. Is everyone still there? Okay, cool. That was so weird. I was like, yes. I'm so sorry. All right. I'm gonna share screen again. Okay. No. All right. So, as I was saying, when you are in this kind of therapy, they have you take like, I don't want to say a test, but like a check-in every week. And there's scores linked with it. We don't really see the scores, but they kind of give us an update as to how we're doing. It goes to the doctors that are there. So every study shows that when a person's rumination score goes down, their depression score goes down, and you want the score to go down. So rumination and constantly thinking over and over again about negative things repeatedly is directly linked with depression. So how do you stop ruminating, right? How do you train yourself to stop thinking? First of all, you have to think about what you're thinking. You have to the first thing is you have to recognize that you are doing it. So then I got homework and I was like, really? Okay. So what I had to do, every time I caught myself ruminating, I had to make a tally. And then I would have to write down what I was doing and where I was and how I felt, what I was ruminating about and how I felt afterwards. And there was a pattern and I saw it right away. I was alone, either in my room or isolating myself, or I was in my car. The car was really bad. I was in my car. I was thinking over and over again about just bad things and what I wish I could say to people and what I wish I could change. And every time, okay, did you feel better or worse? I felt worse. If you do this for so long, your whole life, your brain thinks that that's like almost a soothing tool while you're doing it, because you're reaffirming your own thoughts. But in reality, all you're doing is bringing negativity. So I remember the first day after I had done it, so 24 hours, I had to tell my therapist how many tally marks I had. I had over 100. Because, I mean, think about how many different thoughts you have throughout the day. I had well over 100 tallies for rumination. And after a while, recognizing that I was ruminating helped me stop ruminating. But then how do you stop? I would literally out loud, if I was in the car, I would out loud tell myself to stop. Like, you have to figure out how to interrupt that thought process. So that might be saying it out loud, stop. Sometimes I would tell myself, okay, stop. Is this making me feel better? Or is this making me feel worse? Well, it was making me feel worse. Another thing that really helped me, and obviously, like, some of these you can't do while you're driving. A lot of people ruminate while they drive, just so you know. Like, other people in my group are like, oh, when I drive. So one thing you can do while you drive, and Elle touched on it a little bit, is body scans. So when you're ruminating, you're kind of up here. You're not in touch with reality and you're not thinking in the present moment. So what you can do is I start with my toes and I'll work my way up and I'll like scrunch my toes and then relax them. And then I'll scrunch and then relax all the way up. Or I will, if I'm not driving, I will think about relaxing every muscle, starting with the tips of my toes, If you struggle ruminating before you go to bed, which I know a lot of people do too, this helps a lot. Um, I also found, and I try to do this consistently still, is meditating right when I wake up helps me have a clearer mind and be more self aware for the rest of my day. Because the more self aware I am, the more I realize what I'm thinking about and if my thoughts are helping me or hurting me. And meditation doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be that. It could be like checking in with myself. Like I will sometimes write down, how am I feeling? What are my goals for the day? It's really just honing in and focusing in on yourself. Exercise is also a form of meditation. Um, and like when I exercise, I try to like tune in with like, oh, my muscles are doing this right now. That's so cool. So it's really just trying to hone in and center on your body. I will say that as someone who was sexually assaulted, that's something I struggled with at first because I realized I had this disconnect. So all of these things I'm talking about, like I wouldn't say try to do it on your own if you're not comfortable. I would say have some sort of professional support if you can with some of these things. I'm just sharing what has worked for me, but I know with this stuff, I did not start it on my own. I had professional support. And then grounding myself. When I would feel like, and I still do this today, there is an escalation of some sort or an escalating situation, or I can just tell I am not thinking clearly and not being present. It sounds really weird, but I just think about the bottoms of my feet on the ground. It's the most simple thing, but it kind of brings me back to I am here, I'm okay, I'm alive, and it's going to be okay. And the grounding part for me helps me to then talk to myself. Because if I'm up here and I'm trying to talk to myself, it's just not going to go well. There's been situations before where I've been aware I was not thinking rationally. Um, and grounding myself helped. Abby, do I go till 30 or 4?
I have you down until 3:30, but we don't have another speaker until 4. So if,
Okay, I thought I went till 4. I have more.
yeah.
Okay. I just realized that. I was like, ooh, okay. And then another thing that has helped me personally is very tough, but it's called radical acceptance. This also helped me with rumination because so I had to drive almost 2 hours, hour one way, hour back from therapy every day. So I actually listened to a book called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach. And it helped me like think about being in the present moment. But radical acceptance is when you stop fighting reality, stop responding with impulsive or destructive behaviors when things aren't going the way you want them to, and let go of bitterness that may keep you trapped in the cycle of suffering. So when we look back at that cycle of feelings, thoughts, behaviors, that can sometimes be a cycle of suffering. You are continuing to allow yourself to suffer. And for me, like I didn't realize, I guess, that like isn't normal. Like once I really got the help, I was like, people feel like this? Like this is so radical acceptance takes a lot of practice. Um, and it kind of looks different for everyone. Some people use radical acceptance and they kind of tie in God or, whatever religion they practice. How I kind of think of it is I let me back up. I so badly wanted apologies from people because I thought that would fix everything. I wanted somebody to tell me something that was just going to like make me feel better. I wanted so badly to get revenge on people, and I was just holding on to this anger and trying to think, well, if I did this, then this wouldn't have happened, then this wouldn't have happened. And I was so consumed with like this cycle of just torturing myself with what could have been or what should have happened, that I wasn't allowing myself to just accept what had happened and learn how to move forward. I was not allowing myself to move forward so that I could continue on with the rest of my life. Like I was at a point where I just didn't think it was ever going to get better. Um, and radical acceptance can be hard, especially for if you've been assaulted or abused or things like that, because I think when I first heard it, I was like, well, I can't accept that someone did that to me. You're not, when I say accepting, you're not accepting that it was okay. You're accepting the reality, because when you accept the reality, you can move forward with getting help. But if you know how I talk about I kept running, I was not accepting reality. So radical acceptance, there's lots of books on it. It also ties in with forgiveness. One thing I will say about forgiveness, I am a bitter person sometimes. And I'm just like, no, why would I forgive you? You did that to me. Okay. Holding on to anger, I can't remember where I read this. Being angry with someone and expecting it to affect them is like me drinking poison and expecting them to get sick. Like me holding on to that only hurts me. And I like did not realize that for the longest time. I thought I was, oh, they're gonna hurt if I hold on to this. No, it's only hurting me. Some other things I realized while I was working through all of these things was that for the longest time, I was comfortable in my suffering because that's all I knew. I talk about how my body hurt, like it ached because I was so like tense all the time that was normal to me. I also like my weight would fluctuate. I was underweight pretty bad a few times because when your body is in flight or fight mode, it thinks that there's real danger, because we have fight or flight for a reason, right? If you see a bear in the woods, you go into fight or flight mode. That's a reason to go into fight or flight mode. When you're just all the time expecting bad things to happen, your body stops doing what immediately it needs to do. So that's a lot of times you hear people who suffer with mental health have digestion issues because your brain is like, okay, I can take care of that later. Right now I have to fight. And I was so used to that. So I would like lose my appetite all the time. I wouldn't eat. I now know for myself, when I'm checking in with myself, I feel depression and anxiety very physically. So that is a sign that I know for myself. But I realized I was in this cycle, and it was so scary for me to think about getting out of it because I was so afraid I couldn't do it. Like I had so much doubt in myself that I can't do it. No, it's too hard. I can't do it. I'll just keep living like this. And I think it was like 2 weeks in to therapy, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. like not therapy. I don't want to live like this anymore. So that's when I really started to put the work in, because I realized I am the only one that goes to sleep with me and has every day my whole life. I'm the only one that's woken up with me every day my whole life. I am the only one that can put in the work to save myself. Do I have a support system? Yes. Could I have learned these tools by myself? No. But I was the one that ultimately decided to go get help and to follow through with what I was learning, right? It was up to me. Um, it sounds blunt, but at the end of the day, no one is coming to save you. No one can do it for you. You have to do it. And it's so uncomfortable and so scary. But looking back, it makes me so sad that I waited so long, because the life I live now and the life I lived then is just so different. And I wish I would have realized the strength I had to go through it rather than avoid it for so long. I think a lot of people can relate to that too. So when you're going through radical acceptance and being more in tune with yourself, like, we're not perfect beings, right? We make mistakes. As much as I wanted to be perfect, I wasn't. And in a way, that's also why I didn't want to get out of that cycle of suffering, because I didn't want to face that, like, one, I needed help, and two, I had made mistakes in the past as well. So this is one of my favorite quotes by Brene Brown, and I read a few of her books in therapy, and I still do. But loving ourselves through the process of owning our story is the bravest thing we'll ever do. So you're going through getting help, but also learning to have self-compassion and love yourself through the process. So there were things I had to accept that I had done in the past because I was so anxious, especially in high school. I said some really hurtful things to my parents, and I didn't want to face that I had done that. But it was a part of my story, and that doesn't mean I'm not deserving of loving myself and owning that, because that is a part of my story. And now I know it is a symptom of anxiety and depression as well. And even sharing this with you today, 2 years ago, would never have done this. But I do this also in the hopes that maybe something will resonate with someone. And yeah, I hope that makes sense. I touched on this a little bit, but I kind of talked about how I had lived in a cycle of I had to be perfect. I had to be the best. I had to be the leader. I had to be in charge. I had to look good. I had to, date this person. And I was just trying to prove myself. And this is a part of radical acceptance, is if you live in a cycle where you think you have to be the best all the time, or you have to set goals and meet these high expectations all the time, you are only feeding the lie in your brain that that's the only way you have worth. And I realized that because throughout this, I had to kind of find my own identity again, because my identity was so wrapped up in proving that I was good enough. But in doing that, I just kept feeding that lie in my head. So I just wanted to touch on that quick, because I know, like, people like I went to college with and people I know now, I see that. And I still do it too. Sometimes I'm like, well, I have to be the best. I have to win this award. I have to get this goal. I have to get this grade in order to be enough. It's really okay just to be myself. That's enough. And accepting that is really hard and it was a process, but it's really freeing and it's a really peaceful feeling. And I talk about that pain and that fight or flight. Once I kind of accepted that it was okay just to be Jen, that pain kind of lifted because I didn't feel like I was fighting to prove myself all the time, or, if things didn't go my way, I had to leave, or, if things didn't go the way I wanted it to, then that person was wrong and I'm right. It was just a very freeing feeling to just accept myself as I was, not for being student body president, not for scholarships, just for being me. So this might seem weird because it's the last slide and it was a part of the title. So we go through all these steps, right? And it's exhausting. And one thing I do want to mention is you don't have to be in like the intense therapy I was in to practice these, right? I'm just telling you what I've kind of learned in therapy and also outside, and has helped shape me to where I am now. But you learn all these things and you learn about acceptance, and there's a contentment in that. But then there's also this other emotion that I longed for so long, and that was joy. I remember I looked at one of my mentors, and she was like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I want to feel like joy again. Like, I don't remember what that feels like." And that was really scary for me to realize. But I remember also on my first day of therapy, you go through what your goals are. And one of my goals was to feel joy, but I didn't know how to do it. And at first I wanted to like figure it out and like read about it and like figure out how to do it. Like, what's the puzzle? Joy is scary, which is weird because it's a positive thing, but joy is scary because it's vulnerable. And so many of us are scared to feel it because we're afraid of it being taken away. But you're cheating yourself out of joyful moments and joyful, like, just joy in general by assuming it's going to be taken away. Do we always feel joy? No. But that's a part of being a human being. Like, I think about like Pixar, like I work at Disney. I think about Pixar, like you need sadness and you need joy, right? So kind of being okay with knowing this is a really great moment and I want to feel this. And it's okay that I'm not going to feel this way forever. That's okay. But I know I'll feel it again. And then how do you feel joy? I was like, well, okay, well, how do I do it? Like, just tell me what to do. Like, I don't live at Disney anymore, so I can't go watch the fireworks. So how am I supposed to feel joy? Like, that's the standard I had set in order to feel it. But you can't have true joy without gratitude. And I know gratitude is thrown around a lot. Like, I've heard gratitude journals. To me, what gratitude is to me is I love and I'm thankful and grateful for being able to see my mom smile. I recently just got a sister-in-law. I'm very thankful for that. I'm super thankful that all the trees outside are really colorful. Like, how amazing is that? So it doesn't have to be big things. It can just be life. It can be the little beauties of life. It can be big things too, but it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. It can just be life. So what helps me is when I wake up in the morning and before I go to bed at night, I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for especially in the morning. So before I grab my phone, anything like that, I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I will challenge you, do this for 30 days. It'll change your life. And it doesn't have to be anything extravagant. So in conclusion, these are some of the tools that have worked for me gaining my life back. And then since gaining my life back, finding joy in my life. So I know I'm kind of all over the place when I speak. I just have a lot of thoughts and very casual. But if anyone has any comments or questions, I guess we could use this time. I'm going to stop sharing. But yeah, that's all I got.
And we went through the same program. I actually have 2 of these books in 2 different colors because of inpatient and partial hospitalization.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this stuff really works if you embrace it. And when I went into treatment, and I forgot to touch on this in my presentation, but I don't know what expectations I had because I'd never been hospitalized before.
Mm-hmm.
But I talked to Jen about it and I was like, what happens? And she was like, oh, group therapy. And I was like, oh, cool. But I expected to just like be sitting in a circle and talking through my feelings with people. And that wasn't what group therapy was.
I was terrified going into like the emergency hospitalization. I don't know why, but in my head, I pictured we'd all be like locked in our own rooms and like have to wear like gowns. And it's not like that at all. So just so y'all know, it's actually a very warm atmosphere.
Yes.
In my experience. Oh, one thing I did forget to touch on, I'm sorry. I do these tools, but also for me, with my diagnosis of PTSD, anxiety, and major depressive disorder, I take medication too. So that's also a part of my self-care regimen, along with meditating. So I also take medicine, but I also actively put the work in. So it's definitely okay to take medicine too.
Like Ellie said before, finding the medication that works for you might not be a simple process. I was lucky and medication.
Oh my gosh, really? I'm happy for you.
On the first try, I woke up, I was still inpatient when I started my medication. So I woke up and I was like, wow, I don't feel terrible anymore. I haven't felt like this since like the 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes multiple tries. Some people have treatment resistant depression, which often doesn't get talked about, where no medications work for them. Therapy doesn't really work. And they're working on research for that to try to figure out how to best help those populations. But there is work that you have to put in besides medication. I journal, I use coping skills throughout my day if I feel I'm getting too stressed out. You still have to actively work towards emotional wellness.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of that goes into that radical acceptance too. Like, I know I will have this my whole life, but I'm okay with that. And the symptoms I have are separate from who I am. Like, I am not depression. I know that was a presentation today, like you are not your mental illness, but yeah, I think that's important too. Like, no regimen or what's the word I'm looking for? Recipe is the same for everyone. And the medication thing, like, it took about a year. And then I just remember once it takes a while for them to all kick in. I just remember it was like putting on a pair of glasses. And I was like, this is life. And I got a little emotional because I was like, I can't believe I've missed out with doing all the tools with the medication too. I was like, I cannot believe I've missed out on life for this long. So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, oh my gosh, that moment of clarity that you just have when you kind of wake up and the medication, some are fast working. I know Lexapro works pretty quickly, but most antidepressants take about 4 to 6 weeks to truly start working because they have to build up in your body and your body has to like recognize it and get used to it. Yeah, that moment of clarity is awesome. And then, you start your journey.
Yeah, and then you own your story and find the joy.